Happy Monday, everyone, and welcome to Live Weather Impact on WCNC Plus. I'm meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees, and today has certainly not been a great start to the work week, but we are going to see multiple rounds of rain before we see the return of sunshine. During this Weather Impact show, it's going to be a really great one. We have a lot of things to talk about: flooding across portions of the United States, an update on what's happening with this new tropical system that we have, and of course, the dreaded, which we'll talk more about throughout the show, Farmer's Almanac, and why I hate it. But that's a different story for a different day. Well, actually, it's a different story for, I guess, 20 minutes from now. But let's talk first about what's happening locally. The reason why we are so wet out there today has almost everything to do with this front that's stalled right now. If you were with us last night, I was tracking this front, and it was just south of us. Remember, when you have any kind of front, whether it's a cold front, a warm front, a stalled front, this gives the atmosphere some kind of trigger, some kind of lifting mechanism in order for rain and storms to develop. Now today, because we had so much cloud cover, that does limit some of the overall instability of storms to develop. So if you actually remember a few hours or so ago, a lot of the activity we had south of us was storms. But as it got closer to the Charlotte area, began to lift northward, a lot of that started to dissipate. Now, maybe not completely, but it went from heavy rain, moderate rain, and storms to just the light rain that we have right now. So again, every time you kind of move into a different atmospheric pattern, a different atmospheric air mass, things, of course, we know can change. Now, one of the reasons why I don't think we've had a big major concern, I know James and I were talking about this earlier, but this is more of a minor flooding risk. And the reason why is there's pretty much two reasons why you would get flooding. You'd either have heavy rain with slow moving storms, or I guess you'd need, that's what I meant. You need heavy rain and slow moving storms. Instead today, you've seen lighter rain and slow moving storms since that dissipation has happened so quickly. So in fact, even right now, we're seeing some light rain for areas in Charlotte and south, mostly that light green coloring here being picked up on radar. Now where we do have some pockets of heavier rain, right about here in areas mainly north of the I-85 corridor. And the reason why is because these are areas that have not yet seen rain so far today. So there's a little bit of untapped instability here. You can actually see some of these showers developing northern side of Cleveland County, a little downpour here near Shelby. Now again, there's no heavy or no storm activity associated with these, but some heavier rain there from Lincolnton up toward the Sherrills Ford area, and then eventually if you move into portions here of southern Iredell County, pretty much right on the border there between Mecklenburg and Iredell, shifting into Mooresville, and then probably the heaviest rain we have right now is here in Rowan County, China Grove, Harrisburg area, and north, and it is still shifting northward at about 5 or so to 10 miles an hour. So again, it's not a lot of significant rain, but it's certainly enough to make you think, oh man, we got some rain, I might not want to go walk the dog right now. And that's probably the most we'll have here for quite some time, as actually, if we go back just a second so you can see the wide view again. Oh, went ahead of myself. A lot of these showers are very, very stationary. And so as these showers near Columbia still slowly drift to the north, they're going to see the same pattern. See these showers by Lancaster? How they very quickly went from red to yellow, back down to green. Again, all of this air is so stable that it's not going to have that lifting mechanism in order to see more heavy rain, which is why if you look at the future cast over the next few hours, we start to see rain shift out pretty quickly. Light rain to kick off Tuesday morning, and this is just the pattern we're going to be under for a few days, where we see areas of rain, a break, more areas of rain. These patterns, very, very hard to pinpoint exactly where the heaviest rain happens. We just know that it is going to happen, and it's going to be off and on, and it's going to follow that same off and on pattern until essentially that lifting mechanism, that front, has dissipated from the area. Now, I do think that's going to be late Wednesday and early Thursday. So depending on the exact time frame, we could see a little bit more sunshine by Wednesday afternoon. I don't want people to think you won't see any blue sky the next few days, but just like today, yesterday, remember, it was very limited. You saw at times that big bright ball, and then you were like, oh my gosh, what is that? And then of course it was gone as quickly as it developed. That's what I would expect for the majority of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then more sunshine and a more summer-like pattern heading into Thursday, Friday, and actually into the weekend as well. This will be more so the typical afternoon thunderstorms, very limited coverage, and eventually high temperatures near 90. And I actually meant to look this up earlier, but we know live weather impact, it's all about vibes and what's happening right now. I wanted to try to go back to see, yep, it was August 1st was the last time that we had temperatures near 90. And of course that was after we had, what was it, James, like 25, 26 days in a row that we had temperatures at or above 90 degrees. So to not have it since August 1st, it's a pretty big deal.
I know we would have had such a long stretch too if it wasn't for one of those Chantal days that kind of broke the record on us.
Yeah, it was July 6th. So if we hadn't had those that one day in between, we would have had 44 days in a row, which would have shattered the 1993 record. So I'm grateful for that. Not just because I don't want 1993 to shatter the record, but also because who wants 44 days in a row of temperatures at or above 90? Not me.
No, thanks.
And honestly, that day with Chantal, I don't want to say it was nice because areas in North Carolina saw flooding, but at least for us here in the Charlotte area, we got breeze. A little more cloud cover. It was a nice little break. All right, let's get back to what's happening with the forecast next few days. Again, rainfall potential at a maximum 1 to 2 inches for some of these spots, but notice as we look at the next 5 days, we pretty much go from heavy rain at times, you can see the yellows, the oranges, the reds, to more moderate rain on Wednesday, to scattered but lighter on Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, much, much better. So that's the big story the next few days. Just like today, cloudy, pockets of heavy rain at times, but eventually the end of the week, a little bit more summer-like with temperatures close to 90. We are going to go way more in depth on Tropical Storm Erin coming up in just a few minutes with WFMY Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley and myself talking a lot about Erin, where we expect the storm to go, etc., etc. But I do want to quickly touch on it just so we can kind of have an idea. Maybe you're tuning in now and you don't even know that we have a tropical storm. Well, as of the 11 a.m. advisory, we did have a new tropical storm. This is Erin. The storm is expected to become our first hurricane of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. It likely becomes a major hurricane heading into the next 5 days. Now, our tropical storm tracks are still going to be 5 days out. However, there is an experimental day 6 and day 7 track that we're also going to be talking about here on WCNC Plus. Maybe even tomorrow if we run out of time. Either way, we're going to be talking about it. So no worries there if you have questions about that. Why right now I'm not too concerned about Erin. Again, we're going to talk more in depth about this, and I could go on for 10 straight minutes just about this. But I'll give you the quick glance over for now until we talk to Tim. It's model consistency based on the steering currents at about 7 to 10 days. If you remember during our hurricane special, I actually did the story a few years ago, but we redid it. We talked a little bit about steering currents and how they have to be in a certain place, right, to move a storm. Storms just don't move on their own. That goes for highs and lows no matter what you're talking about. And so we're really going to be looking at the steering currents over the next 7 to 10 days to be looking at exact track. Now we know that by the time we get to day 10, day 12, day 14, etc., things can change, but at least for now, what we like to look at is model consistency. So just a general rule of thumb, when do we monitor certain tropical systems? Well, 8 to 14 days if a system just popped off the African coast, which is what we have right now with Aaron. Once it gets toward the middle part of the Atlantic Basin, right around the Caribbean islands, about 7 to 10 days, and then a week or less once you're hitting the Western Caribbean, the Gulf, and the Western Atlantic. I do want to at least note this stat because I thought it was very, very interesting from the NOAA press conference from a few months ago, but of the Category 5 hurricanes that have hit the United States, all of them were a tropical storm or less 3 days prior. So it is still something that our team monitors very closely no matter where the storm is. If you remember from Florence back in 2018, that was a storm that was not expected to get close to the Carolinas, but based on the steering currents as it moved, long term, things did change. So again, it's definitely something we will keep an eye on. Here's the 7-day forecast. There you go, pockets of heavy rain tomorrow, scattered on Wednesday, a little bit lesser by the weekend. And in just a few minutes, we're going to bring in the one, the only WFMY's Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley to talk a lot more about all things weather, so stand by. Tim.
Hello, welcome back.
You?
I'm doing well. How are you doing? Back in the Carolinas, having a good time?
Yeah, it's hard to beat the Dominican Republic this time of year, Tim. But, I'm
well,
back.
Later this week, maybe not so good.
Yeah, maybe. I'm coming back a little tanner. Got a lot of time with my niece and nephew, who my nephew turns 4 next week. My niece is about to turn 1. She was born the day before Helene made landfall, so it's a very easy date to remember.
Wow.
So that was fun. How was your weekend, my friend?
I've really been enjoying just kind of soaking up and savoring all this bonus weather time in August that we're getting where, we had a lot of, when you were away, a lot of low humidity. We also had that freaky stretch with clouds and cool weather and temperatures in the 60s all day long. But the weekend was perfect, having those low dew points and comfortable sunshine. So enjoying that. For us in Greensboro, it's been our coolest start to the month of August on record. I know that's very similar in much of the Carolinas. And still, I don't know when we're going to hit 90 over the next couple of weeks. So amazing.
Yeah, James and I were just talking about that because the last time we had 90 or above, I'm not sure exactly your numbers, but it was August 1st, which was like that transition day between our disgusting July into the new month. So it's kind of crazy to think that we had like 25 days in a row, and then now it hasn't happened since the first day of the month.
Yeah, pretty wild. And now, it seems like we're kind of back in repeat mode where today it's kind of like we're going back into that middle of July weather pattern where we had all that tropical moisture and we're starting to get these downpours. The flooding situation is not looking quite so good over in places like Raleigh today. I saw they had some issues in Pitt County, Wayne County as well. A couple of different flood warnings. Not really in either of our areas, Brittany, but, I have a little concern that somebody could get caught off guard the next couple of hours. Some of these storms are just putting down 2, 3, 4 inches of rain pretty quickly out east, and they have a little more moisture to play with than we do, but still something to kind of keep an eye on with any slow-moving downpours either today or tomorrow that might get somebody by surprise.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an important thing it's not just today. It will be the next 2 days because we are going to see multiple rounds of this. So even if you're in this area and you're like, oh, I'm in Durham, closer to the college, and I'm not worried about it, whatever the case may be, that doesn't mean that a downpour tomorrow or a downpour on Wednesday couldn't develop as well. I know looking at the National Weather Service in Raleigh, they're seeing a lot of not even significant flooding, just a lot of like street flooding and things like that. And I said this actually on the newscast earlier, and I don't know if you would agree, Tim, but I think there's a trope about people who live in the Carolinas that we're bad drivers. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that we're just such a melting pot, and there's so many different people who move to the Carolinas in general. So you just have a lot of different people and a lot of different driving patterns. And I think that can also be difficult too when you have street flooding or like the heavy rain that limits your visibility, of the lines on the highway, things like that.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue. I mean, when we have these when we just have the roads getting flooded, though. I mean, it's tough out there. We saw that in Charlotte one day last week, then we saw it in Raleigh, seeing it again today. You just got to kind of be aware. Got to be aware of what you're going into, and it's easy to judge the people that get into these, stuck car situations. It's not always an easy choice once you're out there. So, got to be making your best decisions, I guess, at that point. But it seemed like there were some issues in South Carolina, too. James, you just shared with us this crazy video. It was out of Mount Pleasant, I think, in
Yeah, let me go to that.
Charleston. They had a big lightning strike.
Oh, yeah.
And I think they had flooding problems, too.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean,
I
look
want to
at
know,
that.
what did this lightning hit that made it erupt into a flame?
Maybe like a semi
Yeah.
that had something flammable, maybe?
I'll read this.
I mean, it's
Post
off
on X.
on the left side.
Yeah, the Mount Pleasant, South Carolina Police Department. A bit too much excitement for a Monday. The lightning strike caused our power outages and traffic delays. Fortunately, no one was injured, and Dominion Energy responded quickly, restoring power and removing the down wires. I mean, does that mean it just hit electrical? Because that is... Oh, did you catch that spark on the right? It's
Yeah.
almost like the current flowed.
Right.
It's like cloud to cloud lightning.
There's two things. And the traffic kept going right along. I mean, imagine seeing that in your morning commute. It's just kind of something that would stop you in your tracks, right? So,
One would hope that you stopped in your tracks if you saw that on the highway.
I'm glad the dash cam
Sheesh.
doesn't have any audio, because I would
We wouldn't be able to share the video.
be saying something. Hello.
yes,
Okay, well,
we've muted it.
we know there's rain today. We know there's storms.
Mm-hmm.
Should we talk about a different kind of storm that just joined us today?
I think so, and I think kind of the way to frame this maybe, and I know this isn't accurate per se, but I always kind of think of hurricane season in the Carolinas as starting in mid-August, and we really,
100%.
It starts June 1st, but you want to start paying attention mid-August and kind of keep your ears peeled for all these things through the middle of October. So like the next 2 months, if you can't pay attention more longer than that, pay attention from now until October. That's when we got to watch.
Yeah, I think the stat is 87% of all tropical activity happens after August 1st, but we know Carolinas, it's like mid to late September, early October is normally the most active.
Yeah, and so we have Aaron. Gosh, I feel like we've talked about Aaron for a long time already, Brittany. It seems like it's already been a social media chatter for a while. But buckle up. These things are a marathon, not a sprint. There's going to be a lot more that you will see on social media from place to place. Some scary computer model runs every now and then. Sometimes they've shown it coming ashore in the United States, but most of the time they haven't. And the fact of the matter is when you're 10 days away from something like this, we're looking at the track right here, there's a reason the cone only goes out 5 days, because we don't have much confidence beyond that. So there's no reason to kind of panic right now, but there is a lot of reason to pay attention and keep checking back, as we say, about every day.
Yeah, I think that for me specifically, obviously working and living in the Carolinas for a few years in Myrtle Beach, and then also being, having gone to high school in Florida and working in Florida and Fort Myers, I think it's also important when you start to recognize, you want the storm to get closer, obviously, because we know that we have more accurate data, but you're also recognizing patterns and trends. And I think that people forget that that's a big part of weather forecasting. For example, we know all the time, right? You have certain nor'easters that set up, Miller A, Miller B. You look at those patterns and trends to recognize maybe the Carolinas in this pattern have a more or less likely chance to see snow. It's the same thing with tropical weather forecasting. We know that as the storm gets closer to us, we'll be watching the steering currents at that time, but before we get there, it's a little bit of a crapshoot. Like, we're just looking at what the models are spitting out when they're looking at different atmospheric conditions, but we want pattern, trend recognition and consistency, but we know that past that 5 to 7 day mark, things are going to change substantially no matter what.
Something always changes, and something I like to say, whether it's a snowstorm or a hurricane, at this stage, whenever you're 5 days away, 7 days away, 10 days away, we know a lot less than we think we do. We tend to think, well, here's where the ridge is going to be, and that's how it's going to steer right around it. Well, the ridge might change, or anything can change. you're just still so far away that we have to kind of be mindful of how much we don't know, which is why there's uncertainty in the first place. But I like the point that you brought up about pattern recognition. Before we had a lot of fancy computer models and satellites and data back in the day, the older forecasting crowd, they worked with what they had. A lot of forecasting was just based on pattern recognition and, we've seen this before and this is kind of the way that it usually goes. A lot of times hurricanes in this part of the ocean, when they form that far north out by Africa, they tend to recurve or move away out to sea more often than not. So that's the pattern recognition with this one, and we'll have to see if it pans out or not.
Yeah, and you popped this up on your page, perfect, a second ago. But we talked a lot about steering currents. We're going to pop up a weather IQ that I did on steering currents in just a second. But I at least want to acknowledge this graphic to show, because Tim, you had it, and of course we have our version here. But essentially, what we're expecting. Actually, James, I feel like his is better. Do you mind popping up his? Sorry. I just think that his is more put together. But essentially, we always have a Bermuda high, which is high pressure. That's just off the eastern seaboard. Depending on the time of year, it can be further away, it can be closer. But when you start to get a weakening in that ridge, you can see two highs that kind of push separately apart like this. Well, tropical systems take the path of least resistance. So when the highs are separate like that, normally that curvature to the north and eventually northeast happens because it gets picked up by the jet stream. But I think what's important here is even if let's say we knew this was going to happen 110%, it also determines the weakening or the strengthening of said ridge, because if that ridge over the central part of the country is weaker, it could get closer, maybe impact rip currents along the eastern seaboard, or it could be way further out to sea and we see nothing. So I think that's an important thing too, is even if we're confident about no direct landfall, it doesn't mean we won't have impacts, even if they're indirect.
Sure. And I wouldn't even say that I'm confident about that yet. I don't think it's likely, but if I have a beach house at the Outer Banks, I'm paying attention. I'm definitely paying attention right now through next week and probably through October, like we said, right? You're going to have more of these threats. They always pop up, and this is just the first one of the year.
Yeah. We're going to go to that weather IQ on steering current just so we can get a deeper dive, and then we'll be back to talk more about Aaron coming up. The strongest hurricanes can pack winds up to 200 miles an hour, but the winds within the storm are not what pushes them across the ocean. That job is reserved for steering currents. Steering currents refer to the winds that influence the direction a storm system will move. Hurricanes and tropical storms would just sit in the open ocean without steering currents to push them east to west. This is different from non-tropical weather systems like fronts and areas of high and low pressure. These generally move from the west to the east. The boundary that separates these winds is called the subtropical ridge of high pressure. It's farther south in the winter and farther north in the summer. South of the high, trade winds blow east to west, whereas north of the westerlies blow west to east. This is why we frequently see tropical cyclones eventually curve out to sea once they travel far enough north. Unfortunately for meteorologists, these steering currents change constantly due to varying atmospheric weather patterns. This is one of the reasons why we track every small change in a storm. This can mean a location shift in the eye, the storm slowing down, or rapid intensification. These minor adjustments can cause tropical cyclones to have erratic patterns. So pattern recognition, but we know things can change, so something to watch, but I wouldn't say something to worry about.
Yeah, I think that sums it up perfectly. We're going to keep an eye on it. You should keep checking back as a weather citizen, as someone that lives in the Carolinas. You might not even have to check back tomorrow, but at least check back by the middle and the end of the week, because we'll know a little bit more.
Yeah, and when a storm is this far out, we know we're watching it for upwards of 2 weeks. Again, I like your graphic better, but either way, we know it's quite some time away.
Just a really long way. I just measured it during my local forecast here. I think it's about 3,000 miles as the crow flies from where we live here in the Carolinas. So, boy, is that far away. And yeah, about 10 days or so. So I was saying, I was briefing our news team today about the system. I said, well, the earliest it could get here would be about next Tuesday or Wednesday. And they kind of like, whoa, next Wednesday? It's that far away. So we have so much time to keep an eye out. And more time than we need to prepare, really.
Yeah, and I want to give this example really quickly, and then we'll talk about the Farmer's Almanac. But if you think of Dorian back in 2019, that was a storm that we had pretty high confidence was going to hit the eastern part of Florida. Then it sat over Bermuda for like 12 to 13 days because the steering currents changed as it got closer, and it eventually had nothing to pick it up and move it. So I think that's also an example, too, about how things can change even at the last minute.
Yeah, great point. We'll keep an eye on it. You know, the technology is amazing. We hope the forecast models do a good job this time around, and we'll keep you posted.
All right, Tim Buckley, thoughts on the Farmer's Almanac?
Why are we talking about? We're talking about the Farmer's Almanac because
I can
They put
explain.
out some
Someone
dumb
put out the
winter weather
forecast?
forecast or something today.
Yeah, and it was
Also-
a Google trend. People were
Sorry.
like, what's going to happen this winter? But it's August, guys.
Okay, it's August.
oh my goodness,
The Farmer's Almanac is not based on science. It's based on basically like old wives' tales. And I asked you first, Tim, but just classic Brittany, I just went on a rant, but I hate the Farmer's Almanac. I just don't understand why people use it. It's kind of the same rant that I went on. I know we talked about it, that I went on Instagram about like why people
Yeah.
trust weather apps when they're wrong 90% of the time. Like, did you see? Did you look at it? It has wet for every place basically in the United States. Not everywhere can be a wetter than normal winter. That's not how weather works.
It's not. I just pulled it up now. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure what their process is. I've never really understood the forecasting process. I think they kind of keep that secret and under lock and key, and maybe it's because there's not much of a process either. I also kind of enjoy, and I'll just pop this up. No, that's not the right one.
You enjoy
There
the
it
tropics.
is. There's the forecast for winter is hurricanes. No, that's not it. Like winter has boundaries apparently, so each region is going to get different type of weather. Maybe I don't know. I guess they're saying average temps and wet for us. Sure, it's possible, but it's August. I don't know much about the winter pattern coming up in August, Brittany. I'm not sure about you, but it is pretty far away. They're vague adjectives, so if you want to make a broad prediction, it's best to be vague, and well, there you go. You can verify it however you'd like, I guess.
I guess that's true because, you know, when we do forecast verification, we're basing it on like a number, a high and a low. Like, did we have storms that day? Do we have severe weather? So I also like the boundaries you talked about too. It's like the same thing that, and I know you talk about this as well, but Brad always talks about this. We have like Lancaster County, you know, that has like a little panhandle that sometimes this, like a severe thunderstorm warning will like go over it because they're two different offices. And it's like weather doesn't care about county lines or state lines. Weather's going to happen no
Right.
matter what. Also, average temperatures. I think of
It
our
really
average
doesn't.
temp in Charlotte. Our average high at its lowest is 50, and our average low at its lowest is 30. Well, that doesn't really tell me if it's going to snow or not, because that doesn't mean that we couldn't have one day that's below average. So,
Yeah, and snow is so rare around here. It doesn't happen all that much. One of the things I like to mention to people, you can have a warmer than average winter and have above average snowfall, because you might just get that from one or two events only. Now, on the flip side, you can have a colder than average winter, which we've had, and have below average snowfall. They really aren't correlated around here, but to me, it seems all people care about with a winter weather forecast in the Carolinas. Tell me, is it going to snow or not? And we just don't usually know that ahead of time. It's kind of tricky. Even a day out can be tricky.
I thought
Yeah.
this video would put us in the mood.
yeah, it does. It gets us out of the hurricane mood. Yeah, you also think too about how La Nina and El Nino and how that can change and that can influence, you know, our winter pattern. But of course, it also can
Yes.
influence our summer pattern. And if we don't know if we're going to still be in a La Nina by October, then we certainly don't know by January.
That'll
is it
be
gonna
interesting
snow?
to see how it plays out because, yeah.
James,
I always
we
say
don't know.
probably. That's
the
my best
my
answer.
friend. Oh, hello, Becca.
Probably.
Yeah, well.
Probably snow.
I should have looped that video. Loop
It's
that
okay.
video again. There it goes. Now it's looping.
I thought I was ready for cooler weather. This is not looking appealing to me, though. So I'm going to enjoy the rest of summer and fall for now.
Yeah. We get close to 90 by the end of this week, and we're obviously going to be talking way more tropics tomorrow right here, same time, same place with Tim. Tim, have a great rest of your night, and I'll see you tomorrow, my friend.
You too. See ya.